welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Good to see you this morning, Jenna.
Yeah, nice to see you.
CC.
You guys have a great weekend?
We did have a good weekend.
It's a good weekend.
Not quite as festive as
you
yours.
can always tell who
Busy.
amongst the three of us doesn't have small children. Whoever does the most and accomplishes the most over a two-day weekend, that guy clearly has children who are all grown up.
Hanging out with the Yankee Brain Trust, seeing Chris Rock, coming over to my house. Jenna stood me up. She's blaming it on the kids. We don't know if it's true or not. But other than that, we should have a good show.
Do you want me to show you a video?
No. I'm good, Jenna.
Okay, we're good. Anyway, all that being said, we hope you had a great weekend as well. There's a lot of football to discuss. If an oxymoron is a two-word paradox, then I present to you the word bittersweet. As in yesterday's Eagles-Rams game, as in the Eagles win, so sweet. Their quarterback loss, so bitter. Carson Wentz left the game in the third quarter after diving into the end zone for a touchdown that was ultimately called back. He is feared to be done for the season with a torn ACL. Here's his coach still holding out hope.
Until I know more tomorrow on him, you know, it's hard to say. But listen, there's a lot of leaders on that football team right now, and you saw it tonight.
All right, a lot to discuss in this game. Again, great win for the Eagles, but not without the curse of potentially losing their quarterback for this season. CC, are the Eagles good enough to make a Super Bowl run without Carson Wentz as their quarterback?
Well, going over the backup quarterbacks, and I think the situation in Minnesota is a great comparison. Not only did they lose Sam Bradford, Case Keenum being the backup, but now as far as Teddy. So Teddy is extra. But you have seen that the Vikings, that they are a team that wasn't carried by their quarterback, so it allowed them to be one of the best teams. They've been great defensive, great special teams. So the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that the Eagles actually have better personnel than the Vikings have, especially as far as their offensive line. Overall, I believe the Eagles' offensive line is better. I believe the Eagles' ability to run the football is a lot better than the Vikings. So I've seen the Vikings do it. Now, Case, they have the advantage because they've seen Case for 2 months. So they've adjusted the offense. But what I like to see yesterday was that Doug Peterson, what he decided to do when Foles came in the game was because they have adopted a lot of the same offense that Chip Kelly had, where Foles was the starting quarterback. So their offense stayed exactly the same. So can they sustain that? I think because most teams don't keep the same offense, even though the coordinators and coaches, they lie to us and say that they do. But to watch him make critical throws on third down, just like Carson Wentz, that he does have some experience as a starter. He is athletic enough that they can run some zone read stuff that they've been very successful at. So if there is a team that's set up, I've seen the Vikings do it. I think that Philadelphia, right now with Nick Foles, is the best or one of the best quarterback to backup situations that we have in the league.
Just real quick, isn't that the ultimate advantage for a team when you can put in a backup quarterback and not have to revamp or re-overhaul your entire offense so that the rest of the team at least maintains some semblance of normalcy?
It really helps because you get the carryover of all the repetitions. When you saw Nick Foles go into the game, the Eagles did exactly what they've been doing. So now all that practice time and players play with more confidence because they're doing the same thing.
Right.
It's better for the left tackle. It's better for the center. It's better for the tight end. And you could see that with the productivity with the Eagles. It didn't slip as they brought their backup into the game, Nick.
When Carson Wentz left the game, so he took the hit. If people didn't watch it, he took the hit on a play that was called back. He then stayed in the game for 4 additional plays, ended up throwing a touchdown pass to take the lead. When he left the field, after that play, in that moment, he was the NFL's MVP. He had just taken the lead. The team was going to have the best record in the league. He had just set the Eagles' franchise record for touchdown passes in a season, beating Sonny Jurgensen, beating Donovan McNabb. He was the league MVP in that moment. You cannot lose the league MVP and still go win the Super Bowl. Just can't. And I understand people are going to say, well, Nick Foles, you look at the list of backups, he stacks up pretty well compared to other teams' backups. That's something I'm not yet certain about. I know that Nick Foles was extraordinary in 2013. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 2013. It was one of the greatest out-of-nowhere years we've ever seen. But since that season in 2013, it's 23 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. It's a 78 quarterback rating. It's 6.5 yards per attempt. It's very typical NFL backup stuff.
But look at the competition, though, Nick. The number one competition in the NFC is who?
Minnesota.
With a backup
quarterback.
No. Do they have a backup?
Sure.
Okay, who's the next team? The Rams.
Yeah.
They just beat the Rams. Now, can you imagine Los Angeles playing in the link at the end of January?
Yeah, I think they would be with Nick Foles starting.
You do realize it's going to be very, very cold.
I get that.
Oh, so I hope you calculate that.
Right. I agree.
That's a huge home field event. When you are Philadelphia, especially this fan base is craving for a winner. When they go to Los Angeles and they have a home field advantage, they have more fans than the Rams. The Rams had to do a silent count at home. Now, let's just speed this up to the end of January. All right? Let's just say they get to the NFC Championship game. I don't care who the quarterback is. All right? It's not as if golf is going to be ready to throw the ball in sub-zero weather. The Eagles can run the ball. They got multiple backs. So I believe that to be a huge advantage. And also, based on the competition, New Orleans doesn't want to go to the cold and play. Minnesota's not a cold team, even though they live in a cold climate. So when you look at how it stacks up, yeah, they lost the MVP, but you can't look at that absent of who the competition is. The Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Rams, and Vikings.
Sure.
This is the year if you want to have a backup.
All right, I can't look at it absent who the competition is, but I can look at how they've gotten to 11-2, and this is something I know you're going to agree with me on, CC. Where the Eagles, I know it. I'm going out on a limb. I'm going to step out. Maybe I'll fall. Where the Eagles have been special this year. What has separated their offense from the other really good offenses to one of the very, very best offenses is production on 3rd and long. Yes. Carson Wentz has been a magician on 3rd and long. He completes 39% of 3rd and 10 pluses. The league average on 3rd and anything is 39%. Think about that. So you're in 3rd and forever, doesn't matter. And they're in 3rd and forever a lot. They are top 5 in the NFL for most 3rd and longs against.
Just like Charles Barkley said, the backup players, they play better at home. As a backup, Nick Foles playing all the games at the link would be a huge advantage. Yes, you can go to one stat, but based on the competition, I like Nick Foles and the Eagles based on who else is going to be there in the NFC.
CC, but hold on a second, though. But it's not one stat. Do you remember when we watched week one? We watched week 1 of this NFL season at my house together, right? Mm-hmm. And the play that I said, and I think you were more bought into Wentz than I was before the year, but we were both somewhat skeptical. The play that I said, I was like, wow, like I might be a believer, was a play we then saw throughout the year. It looks like he's sacked, he spins out of it, and makes a huge play downfield. That's what's made the Eagles special this year. Nick Foles can't do that.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with anymore. I mean, based on the competition, I believe it to be true. It will be played out on the field.
Question for you, because you hear a lot of this after an injury like this. Is there any part of you that looking at this injury would say maybe you don't let him, as you get closer to the end of the season, as you know you need your guy, would you ever say maybe he doesn't need to be running as much as he needs to be running?
His style of play?
His style of play. Just maybe let him run, but maybe don't put in the back of his ear, hey,
be more
we
cautious.
need you.
Yeah, well, this wasn't a design run. This is just trying to make something happen.
That's
now,
my point.
the only advice you can give them is when you're at the goal line, you have to get off the ground. Don't be on the ground because the leverage of the ground, which caused him to get injured. If you look at, they knew the DB was going to come in low. If he had jumped in the air like Cam, you don't have those collisions if you go in the air. Now, there is a landing eventually, but to me, at the goal line, you're better off getting off the ground as a quarterback because your legs aren't going to get compressed. And that's what happened right here. The DB came in, the linebacker came in from behind him, compressed that knee, and don't know what the results are, but I don't think it's going to be good.
I got one more question for you. When you say that one of the reports was they fear it's a torn ACL, another report was it might be a partial ACL tear. What does a partial ACL tear mean to you as far as playable, as far as a young player that is your franchise quarterback?
That means if it was you and Jenna, you guys would be getting an operation.
Would you?
For a professional athlete, they're going to try to hold you on there. They're going to put him in a knee brace, maybe have him rest a couple weeks. He'll play with the painkiller, but he still needs surgery on him.
Moving on to Sunday Night Football, you got to love when a much-hyped game lives up to its billing. Steelers and Ravens, and give it up for billing. Pittsburgh edged Baltimore 39-38. Big Ben threw for 506 yards, 213 of them to Antonio Brown. And Le'Veon Bell added 3 touchdowns as the Steelers improved to 11-2. Here's Ben Roethlisberger after the game.
You never know. We'll do whatever it takes to win a football game, whether it's winning by 30 or 3. Really, we just want to win a football game.
Nick, is the Steelers' offense good enough to overcome their problems on defense?
Before I answer it, I just want to say how weird it is to me that we're asking that question, because the Steelers' defense is what had carried them through the first 5-6 games of this season. But what we saw yesterday, and we've seen this in Carolina when Luke Kuechly's out, in Dallas when Sean Lee's out. What we saw yesterday was the Steelers' defense without Ryan Shazier, their star inside linebacker, all of us.
And without their starting corners, too.
Correct. But the point that I'm making is how much slower they looked just in his specific replacements. We've seen the last few weeks without their corners. Joe Hayden's been out almost a month now with the broken leg. But the Shazier difference to me was glaring. The Joe Hayden, they're going to get back. Shazier, they're not going to get back at least this season. And so it's interesting to me that we're in this position that it's the same old Steelers and that it's going to have to be a dominant offense. But to answer the question, yes, I think the offense can do it, because I think the last few months, 2 months, this is shown to be the best offense in the league. You have a quarterback playing as well as almost any quarterback in the league. You have a wide receiver playing better than any wide receiver in the league.
Yep.
And Le'Veon Bell, who even though his yards per carry aren't elite right now, he does everything for you. So, yes, I do think the offense is good enough. It's not a position I think Pittsburgh thought they were going to be in.
I totally disagree with you. And the reason why is because I've played on a couple of teams that were offensive dominant teams. And when you get a bad day offensively, you end up losing. If you get a bad day defensively, you can still hang in there. If you're a defensive dominated team and you don't have a great day, you can still win. But if you're an offensive dominated team, if they didn't play great last night, they would have lost. And it's hard to play great offensive football. Look at New England when they went undefeated. It just took one bad half.
Right.
I don't care how explosive you are. If you look at all the greatest, the highest scoring teams, look at how many of them won a Super Bowl. And if you look at those numbers, it would be very discouraging if you were hoping on that. If you were hoping to say, oh, this Pittsburgh Steelers offense is better than some of the greatest offense. No, it's not. Yeah. So it only takes one bad half. So for me, I don't have a lot of confidence based on my history. And I'm concerned about the defense of Pittsburgh. You can't give up 250 yards rushing. Like anyone who's just a little bit better than Baltimore beats Pittsburgh last night. I mean, they almost lost to Cincinnati the week before that.
They were down 17-0 in that game.
You know, so for me to think that, like, this offense is going to be consistent enough, and I don't believe those holes in the defense are going to get any better. Ryan Shearer's not coming back to play. And his overall ability to play first and second and third down, because he's one of the fastest linebackers in the NFL, that can't be replaced. Now, the thing that I like about Pittsburgh, you talk about Antonio with his big game, 11 for 200, but Jesse James had 10 catches. L. Bell had 9 catches. So for me, I'm glad there's not a huge disparity between Antonio and the rest of the group, because you need other people picking up this slack. Now, he is the best, and you're going to feed him a lot, but you need these other players. So do I think Pittsburgh offense is special? No. Do I think they're special, more special than some of the offense I've seen the last 20, 30 years? No, I don't, because I don't believe their offensive line is as good as some of those teams.
And I would agree with you, this offense is not because you mentioned the highest scoring offenses and how rarely they win the Super Bowl. The 07 Pats, or in the last year's Falcons, the 98 Vikings. Like, we know the list a lot. In fact, of the top 6 highest scoring teams, the only one that I think did win the Super Bowl was the greatest show on turf,
yes.
Rams. So I don't think this Steelers offense is that. I'm not trying to compare it to the all-time great offenses. The point I'm making is the offense good enough to carry it until, because they're going to get their corners back. Now, Shazier's loss, I mentioned it. Shazier's loss is an enormous one, and we are seeing...
That's running attack.
Right.
See, so my thing is, I don't think they're going to be able to get off the field. And if they can't get off the field defensively, they can't dominate time of possession. If they can't dominate time of possession, that defense stays on the field, then they're really going to be taking advantage.
Does it concern you guys at all that there are so many close games that they're just eking out? They have 7 games already this season that they've won by a touchdown or less. That's not that sustainable. You already mentioned in Cincinnati game, they were down 17-0. They gave up 38 points to the Ravens behind Joe Flacco. Like, this is a team where, yes, they have so many offensive weapons, and yet week after week we keep seeing them barely
Jenna,
winning.
this is where if you're predicting that Pittsburgh is going to be in the Super Bowl, you say, oh, that's just good teams. They find a way to win. But if you look at it from a perspective, is this the type of consistency, or you're from a neutral, like you don't care, which I am, you're like, that's not the kind of consistency that I would want. But, Jenna, all of us don't come from a neutral perspective. Jenna, all of us don't come from that planet. So it's really hard to not look at it and be like, how can I maybe utilize the story?
It's not. You don't have to utilize anything. They're 11-2. Who are the teams that have been more consistent than Pittsburgh this year, in your opinion?
Not New England.
Okay.
Philadelphia.
Is that the
Minnesota?
You think Minnesota's been more consistent than
Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And with the backup.
Okay. I mean, and
with a tougher schedule.
So at most, we're at 3 teams? At most, right?
Yeah, well, who else are we comparing the best teams in the league with, Nick?
Well, no. As long as we're all in agreement.
So let's just make the proclamation. You know something, guys? Next to the in the dictionary of consistency, a picture of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No.
Oh, okay, so like the argument is not real.
No, it's not that it's not real, CC. It's that with the Steelers, we seem to, for some reason,
Steelers in Carolina. We didn't make it up. This is who they are.
Okay, well, I agree with you on Carolina. We see it every week with Carolina. With Pittsburgh, we see that. I understand that they've had a lot of close games. They've, I think, won 4 of their last 5 games with a field goal at the end. I get that. And Boswell's been amazing. We talked about it before the show.
It can go either way very easily.
But remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about, the Steelers are talking about New England. That could bite them. Well, they played an incredibly physical game against Cincinnati. They had a comeback win. Juju was suspended in it. Shazier's lost for the year.
Right,
then they go play Baltimore. Cece, do Baltimore and Pittsburgh, no matter how good either team is, do they play close every year? Is that true? Right? Like, that's not a consistency thing. And so now they get to New England 11-2. So have they been dominant? Have they been blowing teams out? No, I'm not going to say that.
Nick, how did the Bengals do yesterday?
I think they got crushed.
Oh, really?
They got crushed.
Oh, but that was the same team. They got crushed by who?
They were playing a terrible team. We talked about it. The Bears.
The Bengals got crushed by the Bears 7 days after playing Pittsburgh. That they almost lost to Pittsburgh almost lost that game. Right? So, no problem. That's the consistency that we don't think is sustainable. Right there.
I agree. And I see your point, because you could look at this team and say, yeah, but this team grinds it out and they will always find a way to win. But when you get into the postseason, you don't want a team that's just going to barely find a way to win. Don't you want a team that's going to walk in and dominate beat the teams you should beat?
I want a team that's going to have the 1 seed. And right now, Pittsburgh's the favorite to have the 1 seed.
Oh, we just talked about a team in the segment before that's got the 1 seed in Philadelphia.
If Big Ben goes down for the year, Cece, don't act like it's the same thing.
No, you said, I just want the team with the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Philadelphia is the 1 seed.
Okay, let me add an addendum. The team with the 1 seed.
You can't add an addendum to the contract after you signed it.
Cece,
you got to read it, man.
It was an implicit part of it. The team with the 1 seed has a quarterback with both ACLs.
Let me tell you something. You are a raggedy lawyer.
Raggedy lawyer.
Moving on, the Giants hosted the Cowboys. We'll get to how bad Eli Manning looked in a minute, but Dak Prescott came up big. 332 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dallas keeps their slim playoff hopes alive. Here is Dak Prescott after the game.
It's confidence anytime you're doing well and you're growing and you're feeling yourself and you're growing off what your teammates are doing. So, yeah, it's definitely confidence, and it's good for us moving forward. But we're going to come in, we're going to get back at it tomorrow, and we know it's a new week, and we know the position we're in.
So, CC, on one hand, sure, Dak played a great game. On the other hand, he played the 2-11 New York Giants. So, I mean, how much credit does Dak deserve for beating this team?
Jenna, I think that we might be able to get a collection of 30 dudes together, and we might be able to beat the Giants.
Right.
The Giants are horrible. I mean, look at everything that's going on with the Giants in the last 3 weeks. I mean, what NFL team, besides Cleveland, would have not have won? The second team you want to go play right now is the New York Football Giants. Oh, they just benched Eli. Oh, they just fired the coach. Oh, they just fired the general manager. Like, that's the perfect time to come to New York to play them. A big rivalry game where how many starters they're missing. Their offensive line is awful. Their secondary is depleted. Like,
it worked out great for Dallas.
And CC,
yeah, stop. I mean, this was like a scrimmage game.
Despite that, it's 10-10 after 3 quarters. They're in a dogfight through 3 quarters.
So I didn't see the great game that some other people saw. I saw Dak throw 2 short passes, and I thought 2 guys who turned those plays into special plays. I don't believe that was because of Dak. So, to me, this was a game that they were supposed to win by a decisive margin. So, this was my total expectation in this game.
All right, I want to give Dak credit for one thing first that I know how impressed you were with this one throw because we were watching it together. The throw to Witten. The touchdown pass that gave him the lead, that wasn't a yards after catch play.
Just wait 1 second.
Yeah?
He threw 1 ball good.
No. But I know that in real time that was a big time throw when it was a tie game, 10-10, and he deserves all the credit for that. But other than that throw, this is one of the most deceiving stat lines you're ever going to see, where you see 330 yards passing. The Cowboys came into this game dead last in the NFL in yards after catch, historically bad in yards after catch. His 3 giant completions. The 50-yard touchdown to Dez Bryant. That was a quick slant. 1 safety who was covering the middle of the field. He made 1 guy miss. The rookie broke that tackle, and it's to the house. 54-yard completion to Cole Beasley. Over the middle, Beasley makes a bunch of guys miss. And the 81-yard touchdown to Rod Smith, another very short pass. So yards after catch where the Cowboys had been terrible, they were great at yesterday. And that was the difference. This game was 10-10 going into the 4th and 17-10 midway through the 4th. Now, Dak played a clean game. His first 3 games without Zeke, 0 touchdowns, 5 picks.
Was this the best games with Zeke out of it that Dak
Oh,
had?
absolutely. But it's he had played 3 terrible games and 1 mediocre game without Zeke. So this was, yes, it was definitely the best game he's played. But when you just look at, all right, so what did Dak do? Dak had 330 yards, a 137 quarterback rating, 3 touchdowns, no picks. That looks like the best game anyone played in the NFL Sunday. That's not what it was.
All right, let's talk about what happened on the other side. Eli Manning, who got a hero's return in the Meadowlands but didn't have a hero's performance. Eli Manning threw for 228 yards, but he did have 2 picks. So the Giants managed just 10 points. So, Nick, you know the conversation now has to be, what do the Giants do with Eli Manning next week? They bench him. They put Geno Smith in. Everything goes to pot. They get nervous. They quickly put the Band-Aid back on. They just stick it back on there, and they say, okay, go back out there, Eli. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now. What happens to Eli Manning?
Oh, I mean, what happens is he'll start next week. It's not what would happen if I were the coach. But they just fired the coach who benched him before. But you know now at this point, Eli, maybe a change of scenery will change his production. But this iteration of Eli Manning is not even an average NFL starting quarterback. Like Eli, we can go down the list. He's 24th in quarterback rating. He's 34th in yards per attempt. There's only 32 damn teams. Like, the only thing, much like Dez Bryant, the only thing he's elite in is targets. The only thing Eli Manning's elite in is attempts. He's thrown the 6th most passes, but he's netted the 19th most yards. Like, we know Eli Manning is done with the Giants as an above-average NFL quarterback. I would, if you spent a 3rd-round pick on a quarterback, I would want to see him play now that the season's lost, but they're clearly not going to do that.
But just quickly, why are you so confident that these aren't the numbers that are now going to be stuck with Eli? Like,
Oh,
why do you think he could be so much better if he goes somewhere else?
No, it's not that I'm sure he's going to be better if he goes somewhere else. It's that I'm sure he's not going to be better with the Giants. Now, maybe he's shot no matter where he is, but with the Giants, I think it's done for him.
Yeah, the Giants, he only has one offensive player. That's Ingram, the tight end. So trying to judge any quarterback with this offensive line, the reason why Eli, his yards per attempt is way down, because the offensive line, you can't hold the football. So if you can't hold the football because no protection, you have to throw the ball short and quick. So that leads to that number. If I'm the Giants right now, I start Eli in this game, I go back to the same plan that they had 2 weeks ago. That's Eli, you're going to start the game, all right? At some point in the game, we're going to get Webb into the game. Now, if you choose not to start, no problem. You're a big boy, all right? But this is the option I'm going to give you out of respect. You can start the game, but at some point, you will be pulled for the game because I need to see in the next 3 games, and it might not be in the Eagles game this week. It might be in week 16 and 17, but it's either a 3-game window, a 2.5-game window, or a 2-game window. Those are the ways that I look at the young prospect to see if he's worthy or what do I do in this upcoming draft.
Because at this point, the only question mark they have is if Davis Webb can play. We know what Geno can do. You obviously know what Eli can do, and you know what
Davis Webb is going to look awful when they put him in there.
Welcome back to First Things First. We welcome Greg Jennings in.
Good to see you, Greg.
What's happening,
Looking
man?
good as always.
I try, man. I try. Preacher.
You one of the few people in the company that wear brown, man. What's going on with that?
Hey, you know, shh.
Victoria.
All right,
Greg got special dispensation.
We'll talk some Packers, Greg. Packers beat the Browns 27-21 in overtime. Brett Hundley thrown for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns in what Green Bay hopes will be his last start of the season. That, of course, because Aaron Rodgers is eligible to return for their next game against the Panthers. Greg, can the 7-6 Packers actually make a playoff run if Rodgers is able to come back next week?
They can. They obviously are in position to do what they need to do to take care of their side of it. They obviously need some work, some help from other teams in this tight NFC conference. When I was at the Green Bay Packers facilities a couple weeks ago, having the opportunity to call that game.
I enjoyed you on the call, too. That was nice.
That. My first time.
I meant to text you, but I got a new phone number, but I thought you did a good job.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you.
No, seriously.
But watching him throw, he has all the velocity, all the pop on the ball. They can't wait. Talking to Mike McCarthy, he was talking about just being relative again and understanding how important it is to have an elite guy like that to put you in position to where if we can just kind of nestle our way and have our feet kind of in the door, he can blow the door wide open. Now, how likely that is predicated on, again, other teams falling off a little bit, not a whole lot, but they need some help. Because if they win out and everybody else wins out, then they're out. But, I mean, Detroit's in front of them right now. They need – obviously, they have them on the back end of their schedule. They have a tough stretch coming up with the Panthers, the Vikings again, and then ending the season with Detroit. But I love anytime you have an opportunity to get that guy back, that guy being Aaron Rodgers, as great as he is, you have a chance.
CC, if he said that a couple weeks ago he saw Aaron Rodgers looking as good as he did, I mean, you could never imagine a little bit of rest, let him sit down, let him feel better, come back in.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you guys, I cheated. When I was watching Greg, because I always tell Greg this when he retired, and he was trying to, you know, say, Chris, do I go in the broadcast? I said, Greg, if there's one thing that you got to know, you have to always be an expert on the Packers. Like, no matter what, like, you always have to be an expert on Aaron Rodgers and everything. So when he was doing the game, that was the game that I came in and told you guys I saw the velocity. Not necessarily in the ball, but in his shoulder.
Yes.
How much pressure and force he was putting in before that game that Greg was calling. So I utilized my friend Greg to be able to do.
Now you have 2 sources, you
It's
and
unbelievable.
Greg.
Yeah, mine, when I don't necessarily have all the facts and everything, I have another source that happen to be me. You know what I'm saying? So I lean on that. But, yes, I'm not surprised at all. But this is a game. It's a collision sport. This is not 7-on-7. If this was 7-on-7, there would be millions of guys playing quarterback around the NFL. There'd be millions of guys playing other positions. But he's going to get hit. The game he got hurt in was the Minnesota game. Who gets after the quarterback as good as Carolina and Minnesota? So that is going to be a huge test. Aaron would have to play great in those games. And what should our expectation be? The wide receiving core, they're not in sync with him. Aaron Rodgers is human. He's missed all this time. So will he be rusty, say for the first half? Because this is not a team that can recover from a bad half. And in those next two games, four halves, they can't have one bad half.
No.
So that's what I worry about. Not Aaron coming back, but how long does it take for him to get comfortable and get back to the Aaron we're used to seeing?
The reason you can plausibly make a case for them is not just because of how great Rodgers is, but because of what they did while he was still there. When he was still there, they beat Seattle. So if they in Seattle are tied for that last playoff spot, guess what? They have the tiebreaker. They beat Dallas. So if those two teams are tied, they got it. They now have a chance to beat Carolina, and they have a chance to go beat Detroit. So, like, teams, those are all teams.
Four teams
right,
that could be in the tiebreaker.
That could be.
Yes.
For Carolina, it'd be a heavy fall, but it's certainly in play. Carolina's got 9 wins. They have 7, pardon me. So the one team that when Aaron was there they lost to that could be involved is Atlanta. So the Packers obviously would want Atlanta not be involved in this tiebreaker because they don't have it. But you can see the path. And I understand people are going to say, man, I watched this Packers team this last month. The offensive line's not very good. It's just rent a running back with them. They don't have a defender that terrifies you. That's the same Packer team for the first 5 weeks. Like, that offensive line got injured early. In Aaron's last game, they were down 4 tackles in the game. So
New England would look a little better without Brady, but they would look a lot like the Packers without Rodgers.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, this is why he's the best player in the league. Yeah, is because you can see a path.
I like where the Packers are. I mean, given they have an opportunity. But what I like with him coming back is I don't think he's going to be leaned on as heavily as we think because they have established a running game
run the ball better
that's solid right now with Jones, with Williams coming in and taking away that load off the quarterback. Obviously, their passing game with Brett Hundley, as bright of a kid he is to sit down with and chat with, it's abysmal at best. I mean, it's
abysmal at best.
I mean, it is non-existent. And when we talk about chemistry with Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb, they can't wait. We have not mentioned Jordy Nelson's name, Randall's Cobb name. We mentioned a little bit Devontae Adams.
Yes.
But they have an opportunity to forget trying to have chemistry. They just want to get an opportunity to get the ball in their hands, and that's what Aaron Rodgers will provide.
The Jaguars beat the Seahawks 30-24. We'll get to the ugly ending in a minute. But we start with this question. Are the 9-4 Jaguars actually good? It wasn't just the defense in this one. We don't say that very often. Blake Bortles threw for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks at all. A.J. Bouye spoke after the game, and let's just say that Jalen Ramsey isn't the only Jags corner with a chip on his shoulder.
We've been talking about that since we played Pittsburgh. We don't get respect. You know, they say Roethlisberger was retiring, Flacco didn't have it. Usually a lot of stuff like that, and then we just went up against a player who all week they said was an MVP candidate, so I just can't wait to see what they say about that.
All right, Nick, how far can this Jaguars defense actually carry them?
Well, I mean, if history's our guide, theoretically they can get to the Super Bowl. In the last 5 years, here are the 3 best defenses I've seen. The 2013 Seattle Seahawks, they went to and won the Super Bowl. The 2015 Denver Broncos, they went to and won the Super Bowl. And the 2017 Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think it's hyperbole to put them in that category. I think they do everything well. And they dominated this football game until the fourth quarter when Seattle had some more Russell Wilson magic in the fourth quarter. You can't throw on them. They are increasingly difficult to run on. And they get after the quarterback, forcing turnovers and sacking the quarterback as good as any team I've seen in recent years. I don't think they're going to have the run the Seahawks and the Broncos did, which is getting to and winning the Super Bowl. But when Blake Bortles doesn't turn the ball over, they're undefeated. And Leonard Fournette's playing well. I mean, this is, when we talk about that second tier of contenders, league-wide, behind the very best teams, the Jags, to me, are near the top of that second tier.
There's a couple of things missing from your outlook for Jacksonville. Can their defense carry them? Well, you have to ask yourself that. Can they go to Pittsburgh and beat Pittsburgh? And or if they don't have to go to Pittsburgh first, can they go to New England and beat New England and then beat Pittsburgh the following week? Or flip it. However you want it, you're going to have to do one of those two things. Also, Nick mentioned the two best defenses that he's seen, Denver and also Seattle. I wish he would have mentioned the quarterbacks that were on those teams because they happen to be Russell Wilson and they happen to be Peyton Manning. So even though Peyton Manning was not the best Peyton Manning, he was a hell of a lot better than Blake Bortles. So this is a defense that we've seen a version of them, but I would say I would go more back to the Baltimore defenses when they had all those incompetent quarterbacks playing for them compared to these other defenses in Denver and Seattle who had Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks who were leading the helm.
Here's what I'd say. And again, if the Jags played the Steelers or played the Patriots in the playoffs, it's overwhelmingly likely the game would be on the road for Jacksonville. And the idea that I'm going to pick Blake Bortles to win a road playoff game against Roethlisberger or Brady
in the cold,
slim to none. Well, but the cold, I think, could benefit their defense. And what we have seen from Jacksonville.
Well, both of the other teams are cold climates.
I understand, but bad weather benefits a defense more than all.
Practicing in 70 degrees and then going to the Northeast today, that's a big difference.
Agreed.
All right? There's a thing called your blood thinning.
No, I get that. But you mentioned them going to Pittsburgh. We did see them go to Pittsburgh earlier this year, turn Ben over 5 times and beat the hell out of them. We have seen...
Oh, yeah, I know, because that's the Pittsburgh that's inconsistent. I know about that. I realize what happened in that game. But doing that in January...
It's more difficult. But let me ask you this way, because I know we got to move on to the other things that happened in this game. Pittsburgh and New England are clearly the two best teams in the AFC. To me, without a shadow of a doubt, the next best team in the conference is Jacksonville. Do you agree with me there?
Potentially. I just don't trust them, man.
Listen, it's tough to trust a team with Blake Bortles. I get it. Like the defense to me is...
And I don't think the defense is going to shut a team down from getting 17 points. All right? That's what I think. Seattle, you're not getting more than 17 points when they were great. Denver, you're not getting more than 17 points and you're collapsing the pocket. So I don't think they can hold those teams down to 17 points, so I don't think they can win.
All right, let's move on to the ugly finish to this game that we're currently talking about. Seattle's Michael Bennett started a melee by diving into the legs of center Brandon Linder during a Jaguars kneel down, and then things went from bad to worse. Seattle defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson tried to confront a fan who threw a cup at him. He was held back, but it still led to a very ugly situation. Here's Jefferson after the game.
I'm a human just like anybody else. I'm a man just like the other man in the stands. And I'm not gonna let somebody disrespect me, throw a beer on me. Like, just because I'm playing football, I'm still a human being, I'm still a man. And I'm out there playing a game. And at the end of the day, it's a game, and I'm a man. I'm not gonna let somebody disrespect me like that.
All right, CC, what was your reaction to everything that went down at the end of this one?
I thought he was stupid for stopping. Most NFL players, we go over it all the time, going on and off the field. The only time I have my helmet off is for a home game. And if we lose at home, I put my helmet on there because they do throw stuff in home games. NFL players know coming on and off the field in a visitor stadium, always keep your helmet on for protection, let alone if you're thrown out of a game, all right? When you're thrown out of a game, there's 2 things to do. Jog off the field, jog to the locker room, and keep your helmet on. Do not stop for anything. So he violated the 2 things that coaches and organizations, security teams, that they go over with you. These things are rehearsed on a regular basis. So I have no empathy for him stopping and trying to engage in whatever he thought he was going to engage in with the fans in Jacksonville.
And they're rehearsed on a regular basis, I assume, because of the unpredictability of what happens with fans, because you can't rehearse anything with them.
This is what fans do. I mean, fans throw things at games. It's like it's not like we're in Europe. They throw things here, too, at games. So that's something that we go over. That was not a smart decision by him by stopping and taking your helmet off. Your helmet is the only protection that you have. So for me, not real smart on his part. And he said, I'm just like them. Well, no, you're not. They actually paid money to come watch you do your job. Okay? So you're not like the fan. And for you to think that you are, all right, you're a little naive to the reality of it.
Well, isn't he saying I react emotionally just like anybody does?
I just repeat what he said. I'm not reading his brain. He said, I'm just like you, which is not true.
Well, he says, listen, I'm a human being. I'm going to react. Like, I understand there was, the way you responded is not the way you're trained, and it escalated the situation. There's no doubt about that. And it's a good thing he did not get into the crowd. But I understand the reaction. For the idea that you had to deal with this, that you had to have a protocol of how you run off the field because people that pay money to go to games are going to act like apes.
This is from high school, Nick. This is not new. In high school games, we train the kids like this. In college, we train the kids like this. In the pros, it's expected for them to be like this. So when you go and there's fans, there's an opportunity. You have a helmet. It's for your protection. All you had to do was keep running. That's all he had to do. Nothing hit him. No one assaulted him. All he had to do was keep running.
Oh, I understand that the ideal scenario is he keeps running, and this is not a story. My point is it should not be a given that part of being a pro football player is, okay, I got to be at practice at this time. I got to show up to work this many weeks a year. I might get hurt on the field. And, oh, yeah, by the way, I almost cursed. Some jerk in the crowd is going to throw projectiles at me while I'm leaving work. Like that should, and the NFL, when we talk about protecting the players.
The NFL will look at the video. Every stadium has video. They will see, and they will deal with the fan. That is not your job, all right? You're not a damn bouncer. You're a professional athlete. There's only 1,600 people that can do like you, all right? There's only 1,600 in the world. So why would you act like someone else when you're not that person? This is the arena for which you play in. So can these things happen? Yes. You play 8 games at home, you play 8 on the road. There's procedures for on the road that he did not follow.
The question that I'm asking, though, is...
I'm not responsible for the fan, all right? I'm not going to be responsible for the fan. But I am going to be responsible for the training that players go through that would have prevented it.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.